Radio Show.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in today to the 25th Hour Radio Show here on Monster Radio, AM 1150. I am your host, Rob Fairless, and on the phone with me today is the creator and co-founder of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Mr. Frank Shankwitz. Frank, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to join me on the show.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Now, Frank, before we get into the details about Make-A-Wish and how that came about, I'd like to real quick just get a little background information about yourself, because I think what you were doing before the beginnings of Make-A-Wish kind of served as a prelude to that. Now, I know you were a veteran of the armed forces. You were in the Air Force, and I asked this question to every veteran who was on my show. What was your motivating factor to enlist and serve our country?
It was just prior to Vietnam era, and just wanted to join, and it also hopefully provided a continuing education.
Now, did you go directly from the Air Force to becoming a police officer, or was there some time in between?
Oh, there was a time in between. I took advantage of the GI Bill and moved down to the Phoenix, Arizona area where Motorola was hiring preferably veterans. They were looking for that work ethic, the stability, and they were also assisting with the GI Bill to send those to college. So I took advantage of that program and worked for them for 7 years, ending up in statistical engineering.
Now, what made you change career fields?
I'm a small town boy. I didn't like the Phoenix area, didn't like the heat, but and it was just the same as a suit and tie thing day after day. Excellent job. Motorola treated me so good. And some friends of mine had joined the Arizona Highway Patrol from high school and just kept suggesting, why don't you try that? You're kind of like an adrenaline freak. And just on a whim, I applied for it, and out of 10,000 applicants that particular time, I was one of the 50 chosen.
Well, that's
and
pretty cool.
Accepted the position. Yeah, accepted the position. One of the greatest career moves I ever made, probably.
Now, I'm reading over your bio here, and it states that when you became a member of the Arizona Highway Patrol, you started working with the Special Olympics program. Now, before I ask this next question, I do want to say that there are people all over this country who have the ability to do something extra to help their fellow man, but they just don't do it. Not saying that they're bad people. It's just that they don't think about it. What caused you to, quote unquote, think about it and spend extra time helping out with the Special Olympics?
Well, when I was a young boy, very poor, raised in a small town. In fact, people took us in. We slept on a kitchen floor. It was just my mother and I. And so many people in this little town of Seligman, Arizona, helped us out. Always predominantly Mexican and Indian in this little town, bringing us beans and tortillas and that. But one gentleman that became my father figure, my mentor, said, Frank, when you can, give back. And I said, Juan, how can I give back? I don't have a thing. He said, you don't have to have money to give back. You can give your time. And he gave an example. Look at Mrs. Sanchez. Look at her. She's a widow. Look at her yard. It's full of weeds. It needs cleaned up. You can do that, which I did and started learning that. And then following the Air Force, Motorola, all of a sudden I had a little bit extra time with the Arizona Highway Patrol and the Special Olympics as a way to finally start giving back and love working with those kids.
What type of things did you do as a volunteer with the Special Olympics? Did you have a designated role or job with them?
Well, yes, and it was a volunteer thing. And I was pretty good in baseball. So I was teaching the baseball throw, was one of the Olympics, how far we can throw a softball, and working with the kids on that. And my gosh, we were working on a park downtown, and one kid threw it so far in the little town of Yuma, it went in the street and cracked the windshield. So while I'm laughing, I got to take care of that also.
I bet. Now, I know you've told this story many times, and I'm assuming you don't mind telling it again for my listening audience who might not be aware of how it started. But how did the first seed get planted that initially became Make-A-Wish? What's the story there?
Well, I was a motorcycle officer at the Arizona Highway Patrol, and on a squad that worked, the 10-man squad worked the whole state of Arizona. And this is during a period when the television show Chips was very popular, especially with the younger children. And Chips was about two California Highway Patrol motorcycle officers with Eric Estrada and Larry Wilcox. And when we started going to these little towns, we'd be riding through town, two-man team, and all of a sudden, hey, Chips, hey, Punch and John, is the name of the characters on his TV show. So we use this as a kind of a PR tool. We got permission to go to the grade schools and talk to the children about bicycle safety, which they could care less about. They just wanted to get on the motorcycles, which was fine. And in 1980, a U.S. Customs officer by the name of Tom Austin had befriended a little 7-year-old boy named Chris. And Chris had terminal leukemia, only a couple weeks to live. And he always told his mother and Agent Austin, when I grow up, I want to be a highway patrol motorcycle officer just like Punch and John. I wish I could do that. And Ron called the Arizona Highway Patrol, said, is there anything you can do? Could somebody meet this little boy? And our department went all out with the permission of his doctor, Chris's doctor, his mother. We picked him up at his hospital, and our state police helicopter flew him to our headquarters building, where I just happened to meet this little boy. And the helicopter landed. I expected our paramedics to help him out. I'd never met this little boy. I knew he was just coming off IVs. Instead, here comes a little pair of red sneakers jumping out of the helicopter, running over to me. Hi, I'm Chris. Can I get on your motorcycle? Well, of course. And our equipment was identical to California Highway Patrol. In fact, we did our initial training with them. And he had watched his television show Chip so much, he knew every button and switch on a motorcycle. This is a siren. Can I turn it on? These are the red lights. Can I turn it on? What's in your saddlebag is the same that Ponch carries in his on the show. And I'm looking at his mother, and she's crying. And at first I couldn't understand why. Then it dawned on me that she has a typical 7-year-old back instead of this little boy laying in a hospital bed. And just to kind of condense this story, Chris became that day the first and only honorary highway patrolman in the history of the highway, complete with his own badge, his own certificate, making him a full sworn officer. And more important to him, also a uniform that we had custom made, but more important to him, his motorcycle wings. His wish had become true. He's now a motorcycle officer. And unfortunately, Chris passed away a few days after these ceremonies. And we learned he was going to be buried in a little town called Kewanee, Illinois. Our commanders asked if I would go back with another motorcycle officer and give Chris a full police funeral. We had lost a fellow officer, which we did. We were met by Illinois State Police, City Police, County Police, all wanting to help bury this little young officer. And Chris was buried in uniform. His grave marker reads, Chris Gracious, Arizona Trooper.
Wow.
But flying home to Arizona, I just started thinking, here's a little boy who had a wish, and we made that happen. Why can't we do that for other children? And that's when that idea was born, maybe 36,000 feet over Iowa or Kansas or something.
Now, as far as the beginnings of the foundation, were there any type of obstacles that you had to overcome to just to get it started, or did everything seem like it fell into place as you went along?
Oh, numerous obstacles. It took 6 months to get it going, and the hardest part was to finding people that believed in this type of a mission. Nobody had ever heard of anything like this before, and plus it was going to take a lot of personal time to put this together. Again, I had to find 5 like-minded individuals, which I eventually did. And we received our 501c3 status in November of 1980. And by March of 1981, we had enough funding to do our first official wish. Again, a 7-year-old boy, leukemia. And leukemia was terminal in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to go to Disneyland, which we eventually got that going and developed this greatest partnership with Disney, which is now 37 years later, one of the biggest sponsors. But the biggest thing that happened is the national press picked this up. And again, they had never heard of anything like this. And because of the media, because of radio, TV interviews, print interviews, the foundation just, boom, it just flourished.
Now, I know you served as the first president and the CEO of the foundation, and I don't know exactly how this works or worked, but was there a decision-making moment where you had to either decide to continue to be a police officer or dedicate 100% of your time to the foundation? Was there ever that defining moment?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And during my tenure, I had never accepted a salary. I wanted all the money to go into the foundation, and people say, wow, that's generous. And I said, no, I had a job. But just like you said, after a few years, we started growing. It was taking up too much of my personal time. And my commanders kind of said to me, you've got to make a decision. And I said, "You're right, boss." And I learned in college and while working with Motorola, always surround yourself with people smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the board made the decision we have to start hiring the professionals in the nonprofit world. And that's probably the best decision we made, that we did turn it over to the professionals, which made the foundation grow what it is today.
Now, are you currently still involved with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, or have things changed?
For right now, no. Now, I was for up until 2 years ago, for 35 years. I sat on board for local Arizona, and I was a Wish ambassador, going literally all over the nation and some parts of the world for meet and greets, for fundraising. And I had to resign. I chose to resign a couple of years ago because of this movie that we're doing about my life, which could be a possible conflict of interest. And that's one of the agreements you sign with the Make-A-Wish. It could possibly benefit you, that it would be a conflict of interest. So I resigned that position, and currently I still promote as much as I can. In fact, on a lot of my speaking engagements, I talk at the foundation, and just in Dallas recently, we raised $5,000 for the local chapter. Just the people in the audience say, "I want to help." So the checks went straight to the Dallas chapter.
You mentioned the upcoming movie. I kind of want to back up just for a second here. If I'm not mistaken, you released a book not long ago titled Wish Man, which tells your story in much further detail than what we're talking about today. But now I know you knew it was happening all along, but I got to ask you this question, and I want you to know I mean this in a lighthearted sense. Is it weird to read a book about yourself, especially if it gives intimate details about your life story?
Well, yes and no. I've been pushed by a publishing company for several years to write this book, and it took me about 4 years to write it. And with the help of a lot of suggestions, especially my wife as an editor, she said, "My God, can't you spell?"
Same here.
Yeah. But there was so much interest in this, and it's available. It's called Wish Man. It's available on Amazon. And then that's what the movie is based on a true story. I learned what that means in Hollywood. It's not the true story. They have to exaggerate it a little bit.
Now, even though the book is an inspiring story, were you ever worried about the public reception of it?
No. I think it's all a positive message. My tagline is everyone can be a hero. And I think the reviews that I'm getting from that, especially on Amazon from strangers, I think that message is going out.
Now, what did you think about when you heard there was going to be a movie? Were you hesitant?
Extremely hesitant. I was doing a presentation in San Diego for Make-A-Wish, and a gentleman came up and just happened to be in the audience. "Hi, I own a studio. We want to do a feature movie about your life." I said, "No, you don't." "Yes, we do." And I thought they were just talking a short documentary, and we sat down the next day with a director and a screenwriter, and they said, "No, we want to do this full-length motion picture." And we talked about details and this and that. The biggest thing they gave me, or I insisted on, was script approval, because I don't want something just so off the wall, even though based on 2 years on the screenplay, which I said, "Okay, I understand what we're doing, and let's go." And now a year and a half later, in fact, next week, we start filming up here in northern Arizona.
Now, have they picked the actor that's playing you in the movie?
Yes, they have. He's a young man out of Australia, extremely popular in Australia. His name is Andrew Steele, but this is his first production in the United States. And the movie is a period piece from 1950 to 1980, so the actor playing me has to be in the mid-30 range. The actor that's playing my girlfriend at the time has to be in the early 20 range. So they've picked all these actors out.
Now, have you been able to meet this actor or speak with him at all?
Oh yeah, I spent the last year working with him. We've worked on being Australian. Hey mate, we have to get him with a little Southwest plan going on. But yeah, working with him in the dialogue, working with him in weapons training, police procedures, motorcycle riding. This young man has worked very, very hard to get all this going.
Now, do you have a release date, or do they have a release date picked out?
They're hoping for May of 2018 at the Cannes Film Festival. Now, if that happens or not, who knows? There could always be these delays in filming, editing, and so on. But right now, we've got a pretty good weather window. It's a 6-week shoot. like I say, starting next week, September 11th, which is an odd date to start for me, but yeah, and then 6 weeks, and then editing, and hopefully in May of 2018.
Now, are you a big fan of social media? Do you have a page or website where fans of your work can keep up with all the latest details on what you're up to?
Oh, yes, on Facebook especially. Just Frank Shankwitz on Facebook. And then I've got a website, which is Wishman1, the number one, wishman1.com, that can follow all of my speaking now.
Now, anyone who's interested in donating to Make-A-Wish, they go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation page, correct?
Yes, wish.org is Make-A-Wish of America, and they have what they call chapter locator on there. And you just enter your zip code or your state, and it will bring up the local Make-A-Wish chapters within your community.
What about outside of all the hustle and bustle of life? Do you have any outside interests, like hobbies that keep you preoccupied when you just need to kind of get away from it all?
Well, right now, I don't have too many free time. The speaking career just picked up in the last 2 years all over the state. In fact, I'll leave tomorrow for Kansas City for a 3-day speaking event. But I enjoy that so much. It's a whole new career for me. I feel very fortunate that I can do this. I served 42 years as a police officer, and I thought, what am I going to do next? And this whole new career came up. But the biggest thing, every audience that I'm at, no matter where I'm at, there's a meet and greet afterwards, usually an hour and a half, 2 hours, and people come up, the majority of people come up and say, I'm a mother, father, aunt, uncle, brother, sister of a wish child. And we get to talk to them. But the biggest reward is a young person will come up and say, I'm a wish child. And I just get to sit down and have some private time with them. And that's the most rewarding thing that's ever happened.
That's awesome. Well, Frank, before we wrap things up, I always give my guests the opportunity to say something to the listening audience. Any final words, anything you'd like to mention I didn't touch on?
Well, no, we pretty well covered it. And just like I said earlier, everyone can be a hero. It doesn't take a lot of money to give back, just sometimes your time. And especially with all the things that's going on right now, like down in Houston and everything else. Just help somebody out.
Frank, I appreciate you joining me on the show today. I can't wait until the movie comes out.
Me too.
Did they do you justice? Is he a strapping, handsome young man playing you?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I have my movie career too. I have a small scene in the movie. There's a bar scene, and I'm a janitor in the background. So that's my
so you
movie
got the
career.
cameo appearance in.
Yeah.